Good morning, guys, and welcome to Ask the Hair Doctor. I'm Lisa Akveri, your hair doctor, and I am so uber excited because I am back with my book. We are starting a new section, a new segment, a new part to the book. I'm so excited because we had a great several, I guess 2 or even 3 months on the mind, and just talking about everything that we have to do. I mean, small things that'll make a big difference. How we think about our hair, how much we love our hair, and we have to learn to love it if we don't love it, and get to know it so we can love it in its natural state, so we can appreciate what God gave us. What do you think? Speaking of hair, what do you think about my hair today? Now, I know it looks pretty short, but it's still, the same length. But I like to do this little short, cute little puff, and I like it. And I pop my collar, of course. You know I like to do that. But so tell me what you think about my hair. I love it. Okay, we are going to start. Go back into the Black Woman's Guide to Beautiful Hair and understanding your scalp. Talk about our scalp, because the scalp really is the foundation. I tell my patients all the time, I said, you act as if your hair is just floating above your head. Hair is an appendage of the skin, and scalp is skin, and we're going to talk about that today. We've got to get to understand this foundation, because the foundation to really healthy hair or to healthy hair growth is really a healthy scalp. And so often when we choose styles, we make decisions about our hair, we really don't consider our scalp like we should. And today, and in the next few weeks, maybe months, I don't know, it depends on how long it takes us to get through this, we're going to talk about the scalp. So I'm so excited. Okay, let's get started. And of course, I like to read from the book because I will just go on and on and on like I'm doing now, and I won't ever get to the good stuff, what's in the book. I was so blessed to write it. I'm so blessed to give it to you, and I'm just so excited to read it to you. Okay, understanding our scalp. Your hair grows from your scalp, as I said. The foundation to healthy hair growth is your scalp. And education, as we've learned, and when we start dealing with our mind, is the key to establishing and maintaining a healthy scalp. Remember that. We must look at our scalp for what it is. Your scalp is skin. Your scalp is a part of this largest organ, most important organ, integrated system. It's a part of that, the skin. It has a need to be, simply put, without oversimplifying it, it has a need to be cleansed and cared for so that the pores of the scalp can breathe freely, redevelop, and heal when needed. Because our skin goes through a renewing process. Our scalp is skin, and we're going to talk about that even more. As your body sheds, your scalp is part of that skin, and it needs to shed away and renew so we can have healthy young skin. One of my another book that I've written, it's called Every Woman's Guide to Beautiful Hair at Any Age, and I talk a lot about how our scalp ages. And we want to talk about that some in this chapter. Let's start with the epidermis layer. The scalp has 2 really main layers. Each layer has many sub-layers. And you would think about that epidermis. We're going to talk about that. The top or outside layer is called the epidermis. This layer is thick and tough. It protects the inner, most sensitive layers called the dermis, or what we call the true skin. But the epidermis is when you're touching your scalp, you're basically touching your epidermis. Okay, when you look at your scalp, when you're looking outside of it, and the epidermis, you're looking at that little pinhole. When you open your hair up and you look at the little pinhole that's sitting on the scalp with the hair emerging, you're looking at 2 things. It looks like one, but you're looking at the follicular unit, which is what the hairs travel in, little pores that hold the hair follicles, which holds the hair. So you're looking at the follicular unit and the mouth of the follicle. The mouth of the follicle is actually where the hair emerges. So when you look at your scalp and you say, it looks like there's two hairs coming from one follicle, you actually have one hair coming from one follicle, but those follicles are within one unit. Okay? Alright, so let's take a look at your scalp and notice that little area. Come on, just do it. And look at that little pinhole. Now that's the only part of your follicle. The mouth of the follicle is the only part of the follicle that's exposed. It's out there on the front line. It's pretty dangerous for the mouth of the follicle. And we must never allow the mouth of our follicle to become filled with dust, dirt, debris, or any other negative buildup. And this is why it's so important to clean. You hear me a lot of times, and I know a lot of you out there have suffered from dehydration of the scalp, dehydration of the hair, and I really want you to hear me out, guys, because I feel you. When you put your hair products on that hydrate and help you to keep your hair from tangling, then you feel like, okay, I can do this, my hair feels better, my hair tends to grow or obtain length better. Well, that's not necessarily true. What happens is it's short term, short-lived. So what over a period of time, you end up with these clogged follicles, and the mouth of the follicle, and so you end up with blockages, an environment for pollutants, which cause the environment for pathogens. We're going to get into all of that. So you must never let the mouth of your follicle have a buildup. You just have to use shampoos that are mildly acidic, but you always want them to be clarified. Stay scalp friendly so that you won't disturb the basic chemistry of the scalp, the basic pH of the scalp. Okay, guys? I know this is a tough part for a lot of you because you love to co-wash and you love the no poo, and it's a big deal right now. But let me tell you guys, I see patients every day, and the answer is not the no poo. The answer is finding the right poo. Okay? Alright, let's keep on. If you fail to keep that area open, you will eventually have scalp problems, which will eventually lead to hair loss. It's really important that you know that the epidermis really have no blood vessels, therefore it can't bleed. So when you scratch and irritate and injure the epidermis, you may think it's not a big deal because you're not bleeding, but you are injuring it, and you're beginning to expose the dermis below, which will be a problem. When you damage your scalp and it begins to bleed, you've opened the door for very serious problems. If you ever, like some of you who have chemicals, if you ever had a retouch and your scalp burned and bled and oozed, and you know that sticking together, how that hair sticks, it's a lot of us run from the relaxer. A lot of you run from the relaxer because of that, because you don't want to burn anymore and you don't want to have these problems. Well, that means that you burn the epidermis away, and you into the dermis, because that's where the blood vessels, the true skin, the follicles, things like that are developed. Now, a lot of your stylists will say, hey, just put some Neosporin on it, or put some something on it, or it'll go away, so there's no problem. And sometimes it does, but in many cases, scar tissue develops, and that's the problem. Inflammation down in the follicle, so you may end up with cicatricial, sometimes scar and alopecia on the internal portion of the follicle, and you don't want that. And there's so much mystery around cicatricial alopecia. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on, but there's so many things that can occur, and while everyone's researching, and the dermatologists, the scientists, the hair experts, while we're out here researching, you may be suffering from something you could have prevented by just having better scalp care. So this is why it's really important. But let's talk a little bit more about the dermis. The dermis is the area that actually houses the follicle, as I said earlier. In addition to the hair follicle, the dermis will house your sebaceous glands, which is right attached to the side of that little follicle, right underneath the mouth of the follicle. Sweat glands, other delicate tissues and cells. There's a tremendous amount of proliferation, in other words, multiplying of cells, and differentiation. In other words, those cells are multiplying and changing to create a follicle. When you start damaging into the dermis, then you can disturb that whole process. So it's really crucial that we take care of our scalp. And I think that it's important for us to learn this. I think that it's crucial that we understand. Let someone, break it down to us to where we understand, hey, my hair is not just floating above my head. And by the way, I know you knew that, but I'm reminding you because we don't treat our scalps the way we should. I see thousands, I literally mean thousands of women, more than thousands of women every year, and I'm examining them. And I can tell you 90+% of those women don't take care of their scalp. Don't even think about their scalp. Mostly it's about the hair. And today, and for the next few weeks, it's going to be about the scalp, okay? All right, guys. All right, let's talk a little bit more. Okay, now, one of the invisible substances that continuously secrete through the oil glands to the epidermis and the mouth of the follicle is called sebum. Sebum is important in keeping the scalp soft and supple. You want to make sure that your scalp has a nice, soft, healthy, it's just like our face. We don't want wrinkles and aging effects. We don't want that on our scalp. The sebum is important in keeping it supple, but it also mixes with a substance that the scalp secretes called the acid mantle. Now, the acid mantle is a mixture of your sweat glands and your oil glands. Now, with that, it creates a pH. That's why I'm always talking about pH, making sure that we have the proper pH in our shampoos. It's crucial. And when we do that, then we don't have to worry about drying out our hair. Get that pH. Our pH with this acid mantle, it's a pH of 4.5 to 5.5, which gives our scalp its pH. So when we shampoo with something at a 7, you remember always talking about pH balance, where you really want more acidic balance. pH balance 7 on the average value 0 to 14. The average value pH is about 7, and that's 100 times more acidic or alkaline than your scalp. You want to be on the other side of that pH scale, closer to 4.5 to 5.5. By the way, if you're having problems, you can go to my website, lisahackberry.com. My clarifying shampoo is a pH of 5.5. You can check it out. Okay, now the skin on, let's see, go back to this. A healthy scalp is slightly acidic, as I said, because of the acid mantle and because of the lubrication from the sebum on our scalp. Now, a lot of people don't have that extra lubrication. We have very dehydrated scalp. I don't oil my scalp, have it for years. Can you believe that? Because I don't have dry scalp, because my scalp is healthy. Now, we know that there's some people who have naturally dry scalp. I did many years ago. Some people in my family do. But I don't have to, because my scalp is healthy, and I'm allowing my scalp to lubricate itself. Now, in some cases, people will have to use more oil. Now, I keep my scalp hydrated because I'm always keeping my scalp clean with a product that is not going to dehydrate. So it's a lot to that, and you got to really think about it, guys, because when you shampoo with a product that dehydrates, a high pH shampoo, or if you don't shampoo and you allow your scalp to get polluted, then you start having problems with the health of the scalp. Now let's talk about some things. You could be damaging your scalp and not really be aware of it. So we want to talk about that. As I said, the scalp is skin, it's an organ, and it can be damaged. Just like all organs, it can be damaged. Take a moment to think about your scalp as you do your skin on your body. Well, the skin on your body must be cleaned and cared for, right? On a regular basis. You're going to shampoo, you can shower, you're going to things like that. And when doing so, you exercise precautions to avoid built products that could cause dryness and irritations to your skin. So we automatically bathe and shower. For example, if you cut, burn, or injure your scalp, your arm, I'm reading, you would care for and nurture that skin on your arm back to a healthy state. You would take special care to clean and dress that injured area on a regular basis. You'll clean it, dress it, clean and dress it, sometimes several times a day. You would notice that it would heal and it would go through several phases. First, your body's natural antibodies will try to come up to the surface. That's why sometimes when you ooze and have pulse, that's just your body's natural antibodies saying, hello, alarm, we've been injured, let's do something about it. So that happens. Then any oral or topical antibiotics you apply. You may have to see a dermatologist if you've injured into that dermis. And there's some topical antibiotics may have to. Or you may get something over the counter, and it'll bring the infection to the surface. Secondly, the infection, after it's brought to the surface, the affected area, as it's going through that final healing stage, it becomes tight and dry, and it kind of itches like crazy. Have you ever noticed that? You're like, it looks well, but it's just itchy. So you want to scratch, but you don't. You resist. And sometimes we do, but we'll go back and put something on it. Even though it itches immediately, you really sustain from that scratching because you are worried about it, and you have fear of breaking through that skin and causing it to become reinfected. Well, the same healing process holds true to your scalp. When your scalp, remember, scalp is skin, is damaged, when it's damaged from chemical burns, pressing home burns, flat irons, curling irons, hot rollers, burn from traction, from too much pulling, and you tear at the tissue, other heated tools, it has to heal the same way. You can even get a first or even second degree burn with some of these heated tools and some of these chemical guys. Your skin can also become damaged from other products you use, and styling products, gels, mousse, some of these other serums, some of these things that dry you out. Poor scalp care over a period of time causes the outside layer of the skin to become bruised, worn, and thin. That corneal layer, the top of the epidermis, is worn and thin, and eventually getting to the basal layer, and eventually exposing the dermis. At that time, the scalp becomes sensitive. Why? Because the pain receptors down in the dermis are responding to all of this damage. So that's why we have a sensitive scalp. My scalp is sensitive. A sensitive scalp equals damaged scalp. Okay, so your scalp immediately tries to heal itself. Like the skin on your arm, the scalp first attempts to bring the infection to the surface, but in many cases the scalp is so dirty, so polluted, it does not have the right environment for healing. So we end up with more scalp problems. Buildups from hair products, dust, dirt, and debris will house. It creates a mansion for bacteria, pathogens, disease-causing bacteria. So you end up with a problem that you never should have had. This will slow down the healing process even more. Unlike the skin on your arm, the skin on your scalp has not been given the opportunity to heal. We just don't care for the skin on our scalp like we do the skin on our arm or any other part of our body. Our face, right below our scalp. Oh my goodness. The things we do to our scalp, we would never, ever do to our face. Okay, so the scalp becomes infected, and as the infection gets worse, inflammation comes into play. Those inflammatory cells just live, breed, and grow around your white follicle. And that's the problem. And it causes other problems. And then as it tries to surface, it often is, as it tries to heal, it often becomes dry, flaky, and itchy because the skin is turning over to renew itself. It's peeling to healing. And we're going to get into all of that more and more. The natural reaction to a dry, itchy scalp problem is to scratch. And what do we scratch with? Our fingernails, or a pencil, or a pen, or whatever we can get to. Combs. I see ladies beating, pulling, digging, all kinds of things. Now keep in mind too that your fingernails are holding, and these things, objects, a number of germs. And when you scratch your scalp, you're causing more problems. So the more you scratch, the more it itches. An area that was once a small damaged area, some of you will start out with a little space. There we go. And then you end up with this big space. Not only will you have an injury there, but you'll lose hair eventually. Sounds familiar to some of you? I beg you, I plead with you, please do something about this. Something can be done about this. Okay. As that area, like I said, let's see. Nowadays, many people label a damaged scalp as a sensitive scalp, and as I said earlier, it's just damaged. The cycle of damage will continue until you take better care of your hair. It's not going away. It gets worse, actually. Now that you're really think about it, your newly educated mind, everything I'm telling you, let that take control and do what you're supposed to do. Remember, we talked about it. You got to think it. It has to get in your mind. Then you do it. But if you can't think it, you can't do it. Okay? Remember that, guys. Okay. Oh my goodness. Do we have time to go to this next part? I want to talk about something, and we're gonna run out of time, but I do want to talk about this, lifting the dandruff. Oh my goodness. For years, scratching the scalp, or as we called it, lifting the dandruff, was common way to treat flaky scalp. I remember growing up and seeing many of my family members, even my mom would say, "Hey baby, can you come over and scratch my scalp?" And she would literally fall asleep. And it would just do it for hours. It was often immediate gratification, relaxation. As I said, they would even fall asleep. But the experience of consistent sawing away at our scalp with a comb would cause problems. A few days later, the scalp would begin to feel dry and itchy. Again. And then we would start scratching and doing those things again. Part of the reason was the scalp was trying to heal itself. The scalp was injured. People mistakenly believe this reoccurrence of the itching and flaking due to the new dandruff. But it was basically, which is what new dandruff, epidermis layers really trying to heal. And the more you scratch, the more you flake and itch. Have you noticed that? The more you scratch your scalp, the more you flake and itch. I mean, it's something. You have to think about that, guys. And even later, when I made a decision to become a hairstylist, because before I became a trichologist, I was a stylist for many years, I can remember that practice being in the salon. We had on our menu, scalp scratch, 50 cents. Now I'm telling my age. That's okay. We're family. You're friends. I can tell you. Okay. That's what we did. We scratched the scalp, and it was on the menu. And I can remember some of the little ladies saying, "Scratch my scalp. Oh, it feels so good." And they would just fall asleep, and flakes would be all over their face. And we scratch it, and then we pour this sea breeze, and they would cringe. We'd pour that down in the scalp. Then next 2 weeks, they'd come back and they'd say, "Ooh, baby, don't scratch it this week. It's still sore from the last time, but I'll be ready in 2 weeks." We never thought about how that damage, how much damage that was causing us. That sawing away at the scalp was causing problems. One, it was causing more flakes because every time you injured, the skin had to recover from that sawing away of the scalp. The other thing, we started noticing some other problems. I conducted a study many years later called Scalp Is Skin. And in that study, I showed where that sawing of the scalp, women who practice that or women who have flaky scalp, end up with scalp problems, hair loss, density and consistency. So we have to be careful. I am convinced in all of my studies and everything that I do that eventually it causes high level of scalp damage where you may need to see a dermatologist. And at that time, we simply did not realize what the damage was causing to this client's scalp. We just didn't pay attention to it. So, we're going to talk about some low-level scalp damage, high-level scalp damage on our next, we may get to high-level, chemical burns. We're going to talk about that on our next session. But I'm Lisa Akbir. We're out of time. I am your hair doctor, and I love you guys. And I will see you next time. To God be the glory in Jesus. Thank you so much for letting me come in. And by the way, thank you guys so much for all the remarks about the bentonite clay, the apple cider vinegar, and the avocado oils. Oils are for lubricating. The vinegar is something you want to stay away from because it eventually dehydrates and it doesn't clean. It just removes grime, but it does not clean. It won't, and the clay for sure does not clean. It'll give you it has some natural minerals there, which are great for the scalp, excuse me, for the hair. But guys, shampoo, pH 4.5, 5.5, lots of nice cleansing, lots of rinsing. Do it. Just take care, okay? See you next time on Ask the Hair Doctor. Love you.